How was your week, Sarah?
Well, a little different. So I think, as we mentioned in the last podcast, I was starting a new job.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, done that.
Hell yeah.
So, for everyone out there listening, I finally started where Caitlin is working. We're not going to name names. Let's keep it personal. But so far, the first week has been pretty good.
Basically, I mean, without giving any shout outs, we work at a private practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awesome.
Completely different from where we used to work. Not crapping on where we used to work, but this place is just a lot less stressful. And just predicting, I don't think I'm going to be burnt out. I don't think I'm going to feel the pressure that I did at our last job.
Right.
So I think this was a very good change for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. We got to have lunch together
I know.
2 days this week. So, and I was off 2 days. So,
I mean, we're
50-50.
I mean, first week back together because we did, as you know from previous chapters, we started together at the same job.
That's how we met, became besties.
Started our book club with just 3 members of us back then.
Yes.
Then Caitlin, of course, had to move on, had to make good choices for her. And I followed suit, and look where we're at.
Here we are.
Yeah.
And now we're hosting this podcast.
Yeah.
With the Smutties.
The Smuts. And
you find Smuts?
It won't always be smut, I promise, listeners. Of course, we'll have some thrillers. Some
mysteries.
Yes. Some drama.
We're all for, diversifying our reading selection. This is just where we kind of started, honestly.
Yes, we did start with smut. That is our origin.
Romance, but I mean, I don't feel like I don't feel like after is strictly romance. It's very
It
gives you insight to this emotionally abusive relationship, and you really get a feel for what it's like in abusive relationships where you're like, why can't she just leave him, and why can't they do A, B, and C? Why isn't that happening? And it gives you real insight as to the psyche and the mindset of someone who is in an emotionally abusive relationship. I know it's hard for some people to work through the books and get through them all, but I think once you get to the end, it's a story of recovery, and forgiveness, and being able to overcome your trauma and being able to overcome your addictions and get to a good place where, as both of us being therapists, I feel like this book, while we were frustrated, and I'm still frustrated reading it, I still get aggravated, and that's what we're going to talk about. I feel like we get to a place where we're like, we want them to succeed, and we want Hardin and we want Tessa to overcome the shit that they've been through.
Yes.
And I think we see that, we were able to see the whole book as a recovery story. But I mean, I have read where some people can't even get through it. People have stopped in the book that we're getting ready to talk about because they're like, I'm done with the back and forth. Yes. I'm done with it. I can't do it anymore. It's over. And I saw a girl on TikTok where she was like, I'm literally going to give these books away to somebody because I can't read the back and forth anymore. And I'm like, I get that. I totally get that. I understand where people are coming from when they're like, I cannot finish these books. They are too much. It gives me a headache. And I'm like, I get that.
Yeah.
But I personally, I guess you can look up spoiler reviews or whatever, but I had to know what happened at the end.
Right.
And I didn't want to look up spoiler reviews. So, that was just me. I needed to know how it ended, and I wanted to read all the books. I wanted to finish them, but I completely respect and understand people who couldn't. So anyway, that's
I mean, and I think I mentioned this in the last chapter. I had actually read reviews online where a couple people said that they just stopped after the second book, after we collided, because the ending was in a kind of a way where it was a cliffhanger, but also where a lot of readers were like, you know what, this is a decent ending. I've already read like over 1,000 pages. I think I can stop here. So like, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, this next book is almost 1,000 pages. I totally get that.
833 pages.
Mm-hmm. So I definitely get that. Yes.
Yes.
But this book, I mean, and it's probably the therapist in me. This book has got, overcoming your history, your trauma, your literal, alcohol abuse, your trauma, which I've already said that, sorry, but your alcohol abuse, the emotional abuse, not just like with Tessa and Hardin, but we've got Tessa's mom. We've got,
Hardin's mom.
Yes, I was about to say in the last book, Triss sounded like such a good person, She sounded like a good role model for Tessa. She sounded like a good person to be in Hardin's life. And then we get into this book and it's all a facade. So
she's overcoming her own trauma.
Right, yes. And I'm not trying to victimize. I'm not trying to victim blame. She does have her own trauma. And we all portray that in a different way. In real life, in books, like that is just going to come out in your own way. But Hardin himself is also overcoming that trauma he not only experienced because of what happened to his mom, but also what happened after his mom experienced that trauma.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I guess let's get started. This is After We Fell. Mm-hmm. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Sarah.
This is Books, Booze,
and Besties podcast.
All right. Welcome to chapter 3. So I guess we're picking up at the beginning of After We Fell.
Yes.
Which is, it immediately picks up again. Yes. Where after we collided ended, Tessa bumps into her dad.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I will give Anna Todd credit. She really does like to pick up the next book where the other one ended. But this one was a little bit of a reach, I will say that. I mean, sure, Tessa hasn't seen her dad in years.
9 years to be exact.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she knows what kind of history her dad has, and really, she knows what is going on in her dad's current life just because of what her mama said, which we've met Carol in these books. We know it could be just gossip. It could be exaggeration. So we really don't know.
Yeah.
But Tessa sees a random homeless man on the street and immediately recognizes it as her dad, who she's not seen in 9 years. Let's make that a point.
Right. 9 years.
But he just coincidentally happens to be the random homeless man on the street.
They bump into each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that was, I too thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Which, let's take a second. And I think I also mentioned this in the last chapter, Tessa talking about wanting to know more about her dad after never being interested in years, and her dad coming around Carol and Tessa being mad at her mom. Her dad just, I don't know, it's such a coincidence for me that it just, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a little too much, I guess, because he was willing to go around Carol and ask for Tessa and to be a part of Carol's life. Mm-hmm. And then he just happens to be wandering down the street and Tessa bumps into him. Biggest coincidence in the world.
Right. And also, I was like, I made a note and I was like, I thought her dad just, like in the book too, after we collided, said, I just moved back. And Carol was like, well, he just got back. He was checking in on you.
Right.
He's freaking homeless.
Yes.
Where did he just get back from?
I would also like to point
out. War?
As a homeless man, Tessa says that to get to WCU, it takes her 2 hours by car.
Right.
So for him to walk from where Carol is to where Tessa bumps into him is a significant amount of time in a short period of time. And if he's reaching out to Carol, why would he make that why would he make that, journey?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then, like, the whole thing, like, he's like, I've been trying to get in touch with you, Tessie. And it's like, how? Like,
Carol, but also you walked several hundred miles?
you're homeless? Like, where'd he come from?
Right.
Where's he been? And he also makes mention of how he's got friends at the tattoo parlor. He's acclimated where he's been. He works at the bar, which will come up later. He works at the bar. Like, there's just more inconsistencies that, we've talked about before.
Which is probably our biggest theme in this whole series.
Yeah, inconsistencies. I hate to focus on that, but they're just so glaring.
Right.
Like, and it'll never take my love away from these books, but I where's the editor? Once again, book 3, here we are. Where was the editor?
I do want to take a second before we really dive into these books and talk about our drink of the week.
Oh.
Which is cherry vodka sours, which if you've read the book or seen the movie, you're very aware why we picked this drink. Cherry vodka sour is a big contributor to this book, to a big theme in this book, I would say.
Book 2 and 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Originally, we had planned to do cherry vodka sours for the second book, but there's just a big scene in this book where we thought it would be best to postpone.
For sure.
And while we're on this topic, do you want to go ahead and give some trigger warnings for our listeners and audience?
Yeah. This book, once again, we trigger warning, emotional abuse, attempted rape. I'm trying to think of all the different trigger warnings in this book. Attempted rape, alcoholism, drug use,
physical aggression that borderlines physical abuse, I guess you would say. It's more than physical aggression, but not quite physical abuse.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that covers everything in this book.
Yes.
If we come across something, like we're getting ready to discuss something and something else pops up, we can bring a trigger warning.
Yes. So as we were saying, those are kind of the trigger warnings, the big trigger warnings for this book.
I did want to point out, like, this is always a spoiler review.
Right.
We are not professional book editors.
We are definitely amateurs. Yes.
But these are strictly opinions from us.
Sorry, edit that out, motherfucker.
These are strictly our personal opinions, and we are just here to chat about things we liked, things we disliked, just different aspects of the book that we found interesting, or we were like, what the heck? So we just want to point that out, like, we are not professional editors.
Right.
We just like to talk books.
Which is what we pretty much mentioned throughout these 3 chapters. We started from a book club where we worked, and these are the books we started with. So they are very near and dear to us. Of course, we're going to have a lot of opinions. It's okay to disagree with us. We are totally open to that. If you really do have a disagreeing opinion, totally email that to us, tweet us, send us a DM on Instagram, whatever. We love to talk books. Yes. Even if it's not something you agree with, or if you agree with us and you're like, heck yeah, let's talk about it. Right. We love to talk about books. We love to talk about different aspects, different opinions. So please hit us up with any of that. Anyway, so we're diving back into the book. So another thing I noted was that Hardin, he, is quick to point out a lot of the things going on with Tessa's dad. And he's very protective of her when it comes to Richard. Right. But then you're like, I need you to take a second and realize he treats her really poorly, especially in this book coming up. Right. And you're like, so he's worried about her forgiveness towards her father and wanting to get to know him, and her
her father taking potential advantage of her.
Right.
But it's like, it's a parallel with how he treats her and, how he feels. He never looks at it like, okay, so, I treat her really crappy and I want her forgiveness constantly. But when someone else does it, it's different.
It's almost like a projection, really. He's not ready to admit his own faults, but he can clearly see it in Tessa's dad. It's like a projection, really.
And it is. Like it says throughout, after you really get to know Richard, Tessa's father, and like Carol, Carol is supposed to be the projection of her mother. Or I'm sorry, Tessa is supposed to be the projection of Carol, her mother. And then Hardin is the projection of Richard, her father.
Right.
It's supposed to be like a parallel of them together and whatnot. So, but Hardin never says like, I ask for your forgiveness all the time. But, and I want it and I want you to give it to me. But this other person over here who treated you poorly wants your forgiveness. I can't believe you're going to forgive them and be nice to them. So.
Which I would just like to add a comment in here.
Yeah.
As a therapist, this really points out Hardin's. It's like the beginning stages of recovery where you're not quite ready to address that you have problems, but you recognize that they're there. As a reader, I want to point out how, I guess, conceited you could say that Hardin is.
Yeah.
I can see it as projection. I can also see it as him being selfish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's not ready to admit that for himself. And maybe he's not even on the level where he would admit that. Maybe he doesn't see it as a problem yet. Because he's always been so protective of Tessa. He didn't like Zed. He didn't like the random guy at the frat house in the last book. It really could go either way. It could be, I'm projecting and I see Richard as the things I have going on. Or it could literally be, here's another figure in Tessa's life that is problematic, and I need to protect her from that.
Right. Yeah. I can see any of that.
Right.
I lost it like when they were making fun of the Tessie nickname, or Hardin was like yelling like Tessie. It was cracking me up. It made me like laugh out loud during the book.
It just kind of reminded me of Twilight with you named my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that. That's funny. Yeah. Tessie. And he does it even more like when he's drunk later. But he's like, and she talks about laughing and he's just shouting Tessie. But him just making fun of like her dad's nickname for her was just hilarious to me. So Tessa, once again, has made this massive decision.
Yes.
Moving to Seattle with little to no preparation. And she has yet to tell Hardin.
Which she gets so offended. So offended.
Yes.
When she finally does. And he's like, what the hell are you doing, Tessa? And she's offended. Like, why would you hold me back? Which, to be fair, that is a big thing in this book. But we'll touch on that later. Just in this particular moment, she's shocked that Hardin would be shocked that she's leaving.
Right.
After all the progress that they've made in this book.
Yeah, and it's just the beginning. Like,
yes.
You can almost tell, like, he's trying to do somewhat better, which I'm not saying that he doesn't have a long way to go. He doesn't have a lot of progress to make. But at the beginning of this book, he does seem like he's taking those baby steps towards recovery. I'm not disacknowledging all of the issues. But it's like he's trying to figure out a way to move forward. And then, like I even noted, they're functioning more as a couple.
Right.
In the beginning, Hardin's communication is somewhat better. He he's just talking to her. He wants her to know things. And all the while, she's got this massive secret. And it just really frustrates me because, I want to see them succeed. And, that's the big thing in these books is like, I feel so much. You can feel what they're feeling. I love that about these books. So I get really frustrated when they can't just get their shit together, which is most of the book. 833 pages if I didn't mention it before.
Yes.
Yeah. 833 pages in this one.
Which I would like to point out that they did end in good terms in the last book.
Right.
We move into good terms in this book. So there's no reason that Hardin doesn't already know. Because Tessa is internally acknowledging that Hardin doesn't know. And he should if they're going to make this work.
Right.
She even acknowledges that this is probably going to be hard for Hardin. That he's not going to like it. And she continues to postpone it. Yes, of course, she probably does postpone it because she knows the reaction that's going to come.
Yeah, right.
But it wouldn't be to the level that it is in this book if she would have just been honest up front.
Right. Which this leads us to my next note of like, I never understood Hardin's ambivalence towards Seattle.
Right.
Like he throughout this entire book, I never got a solid reason as to why he never wanted to move to Seattle other than maybe he had a tumultuous past there, which it never really explained that. It just said at one point that he had some people there that he felt were bad influences. He said that, she would prosper basically and he would not. Mm-hmm. That's all I got from him, from his ambivalence toward moving there. Like, that's it. Like, there wasn't like a legitimate reason that he wouldn't move there with her.
Right. Which I don't know if maybe that was just a point that Anna Todd never got to make in the book. Or if it kind of coincides with my next, point that I make in my notes where Hardin is a bit controlling in the beginning of this book. Really throughout. He really does, try to control Tessa. Not always in a bad way, but overall he really does. Mm-hmm. And there is a lack of support. So because there is a lack of story, a lack of explanation why Seattle was so bad for Hardin, I feel that there is less of a history there and more Hardin is trying to manipulate Tessa into not going.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mentioned Hardin lied about being expelled, which is another form of manipulation. He's trying to manipulate her into moving to England with him. Because he, doesn't want to stay there. He wants to move. He wants her to move with him. So in order saying like, oh, well, I got expelled, that's just manipulation.
Right, yeah.
So, he's so manipulative. Like, instead of just having these conversations with her, he lies and he says things that aren't true. And that just really, I hated that. Like, he even says, and at some point they say during the book, like, it's manipulation, it's lying. And she points that out to him, and it's just some more back and forth. Like, I even note, like, the continuing back and forth in this book and the toxicity. Like, I can remember reading this book for the very first time, and I was just enthralled page after page after page. Like, I wanted to know what happened. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much drama. Reading it through this time, I was overwhelmed. I was mentally wiped out. I was exhausted. I was like, I'm ready for them to get to, like, a good place. And throughout this book, which we'll talk about, every time they get to a good place, it's followed up with
something toxic,
something manipulative, something frustrating, something aggravating, anger, emotional abuse. It's just constant. And like, I was like, I have a headache. I'm tired. I don't think I can read this book anymore.
I feel like this is a good point where I could play devil's advocate. We mentioned Tessa not telling Hardin about Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
We also mentioned Hardin withholding information, which is pretty much what Tessa did.
Mm-hmm.
But what Hardin did was manipulation. For Tessa, as a reader and as a therapist, it almost seemed less the manipulation and more like she was kind of worried. Maybe Hardin's reaction, which I feel like is a big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of gives a little bit more insight into this relationship. Maybe Tessa was still so unfamiliar with the way this should go or how a regular relationship would go. Or maybe she knew at this point how Hardin was and she knew how his reaction was going to go when she told him about Seattle.
Right. No, I totally agree. Like, I, just wish she would stop making decisions based on her emotions, which is such a big thing with her. Like, it's all emotion. It's not, I was offered this job. I thought logically about it.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am. It's all about, well, Hardin's pissed me off today. Mm-hmm. I'm going to move to freaking Seattle. I was offered this position, so I'm going to take it.
Mm-hmm. Which we could even, kind of go back to the first book where we talk about how little she knew about the college she was going to.
Right.
Which, foreshadowing, it was less about her being this perfect person, always being prepared, and more about her just like spur of the moment decision. This is what my mom wants. Noah's gonna go here. Done. Like it was set in stone, and she was done. She
even Noah didn't want to go to that freaking school.
I mean, it's kind of the same with Seattle. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know where she was gonna live. She didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like this can kind of give us a little insight to when she was even going to college for the first time. Because we both had those points in the first chapter where we discussed, well, why didn't she know this and that if she's such a perfectionist?
Right.
Well, it makes sense because she'd already made her mind up. That was her spur of the moment decision. Done.
Yeah. One little teeny tiny thing I wanted to point out that bothered me because it keeps popping up is that Tessa always mentions how inappropriate her clothes are for the weather, but she continues to wear this crap. It bothers me. I'm sorry. I know it's petty and it's little, but she is always like, I shouldn't have wore this dress. It was teeny weeny and it was too short and my hoo-ha's hanging out and it's 30 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's that white dress at campus. I'm like, who the fuck wears little teeny tiny dresses to campus
You're not supposed in January to wear white after Labor Day?
with high heels.
Mm-hmm.
Who does that?
It's really, I'm going to say ironic. It may be wrong here, but it's really ironic for her to turn around and complain about the way Steph dresses and Molly dresses in that friend group, but then she does something similar. I'm not slut shaming. I am doing nothing of the sort. I'm just comparing the way Tessa judges her so-called friends and the actions she takes too.
In this book, she mentions that, she's walking outside to meet Zed while Hardin's in for his hearing, and her dress is like, it's too little for the weather. There's not enough there. She's freezing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, once again, you have worn this inappropriate dress. Anyway, we've spent too much time on this. But I did want to point that out. Like, I get really annoyed. I'm like, Tessa, just throw on some jeans and a motherfucking t-shirt. Because I think it's ridiculous that you're still wearing these teeny tiny dresses and you're trying to be fancy and whatnot. You proclaim you're not your mother's daughter, and here you are. Anyway.
Well, I would like to call out the discrepancy there, because Carol would never. Carol would wear a dress. She would wear heels. It does not matter where. It does not matter when. But it ain't going to be a teeny tiny dress. It's not going to be something that Carol can be judged on unless it's that she's too hoity-toity. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Also, it's the irony for me. Let's just get real here.
Something else in this book that is a theme throughout is her relationship with Zed.
King Zed.
Fucking Zed.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'm just like, okay, Tessa, like, it's a double standard. If Hardin was spending that kind of time and was unsure how he felt, which we'll dig into that a little more here in a little bit, she would freak out. She would absolutely have meltdowns, which, I'm not saying Hardin's perfect. He's obviously had a lot of issues. He's had sex with Molly, but she has slept in Zed's bed in his clothes.
Are you saying having sex with Molly is an issue?
No. I am saying that she would be pissed.
Yes. No, I agree.
Yeah. If he treated her, if he hung out with Molly, anything she did with Zed that he did with Molly, she would freak out. She'd freak out.
I mean, as we've seen in the previous book, she would beat her out.
Yeah.
So
she would lose her mind with jealousy. I'm a lady. I totally fucking get it. But come on, the whole Zed thing is just like, just tell him to piss off.
Well, you can't keep tell Hardin you're going to try and that you forgive him and that you want to move forward and bring Zed into the picture anytime it's convenient.
Yeah. That's exactly what she does.
I mean, from the very beginning, this whole book, this whole series focuses on how smart Tessa is, how crazy good at everything Tessa is. She's not she is not unable to understand the Zed situation. She is not incompetent where she does not know where Hardin's coming from. It might be in denial.
Yeah.
But she knows exactly what she's doing. She might deny it, but she does.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like, it's ongoing throughout this book. It was really frustrating. I just wanted her to admit that, if she's going to be that way with Zed, then Hardin has the freedom to behave that way with other girls. That's just how I felt about it. Like, I don't know. It was a double standard for me.
Yes, I mean, it is definitely a double standard. Yeah. It's a double standard for me.
It is. Once again, they have horrible communication. At this point, they're even surprised when the other person brings up that they have horrible communication. Like, even in the first quarter of this book, because once again, it's 133 pages, in case you didn't know.
933. 833. Jesus Christ.
Did I say?
You said 133.
Oh, it's 833 pages, in case you were unaware. In case I hadn't mentioned that already. 833 pages. Anyway, so the back and forth in the first quarter of this book was so ludicrous to me, because they're like, 1 minute they're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally over what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then one starts, they're like, well, I'm not going to talk anymore. And so, like, Tessa's like, I'm not going to talk anymore. And Hardin's like, why aren't you talking? And she's like, well, I'm just mad. And he's like, what are you mad about? And she's like, I don't even know. And then he tickles her and she's totally fine. And which I don't even know if that's real. I can't remember. But he tickles her and she's like, oh, don't tickle me. I love you. And then he's like, well, I'm mad now. And she's like, well, why are you mad? He's like, well, I just don't know. You've pissed me off and you've done something. You're a horrible communicator. And she's like, well, I don't know. Let me suck your dick. And then we're fine. And then they go to the kitchen and they cook together and then they're angry. And it's just like, that's exactly how it is. And I'm just like, holy crap. Like, I have this just back and forth. And this is all within the first, after he gets the verdict or whatever from school. And before he goes to the bar with Richard.
I mean, I would just want to point out that one of my biggest notes from this entire book is the question, why is there always something sexual related after a traumatic event?
Yeah.
Why? It's like that's what gets them off.
Yeah. That's how they communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Sexually.
Which I'm not gonna judge. I'm not gonna do anything like that. But it takes more than sex to make a solid relationship. So if that's how you are communicating, I don't know how far you're gonna get.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the sex is good. If the sex wasn't good, nobody would be reading this book. Because if they had that toxic relationship and then she's not getting the big O, we're like, I'm out. Because, if the sex ain't good and she's getting that toxicity, they're both getting that toxicity, there's really no reason to read a book like this. Obviously, the sex is good. It's good.
It's the smut for me.
It's the porn. It's the porn aspect. But yeah, just the back and forth, it drives me bananas. And it's ongoing throughout this entire freaking book. In case you didn't know. Spoiler alert. Toxic. And they mentioned at some point that they've been dating for 6 months. It hasn't even been 6 months since the book started. It's supposed to be like, well, it may have been just 6 months.
I mean,
in Anna Todd time.
If we're being realistic, no. But if we're going based on the way Anna Todd wants it to be, then it's about 6 months. But they break up a hell of a lot of times.
Which they both say, we haven't been together that whole time. They haven't even been together half that time. Probably. So, yeah. 6 months, that's questionable. If I was Landon, I would punch them both in the face and walk away.
Another one of the greatest points I made in this entire book is that Landon is still the greatest character in this entire series.
Landon's goat, again.
He is the perfect specimen. I mean, he does not judge. He's always there to help. He's friendly. He's kind. This boy has no trauma.
That we know of. We don't really hear much about his backstory.
Which, if he had trauma, I'd be the first person to be this child's therapist. Let me just be there. Let me just say that.
They are children.
Which is another big thing about this book.
Yeah.
They are babies. Anna Todd writes it like they're literally in their 30s.
Yeah.
They're babies.
Yeah. I mean, the sex alone is...
No, yeah.
I don't even have any words. I can't even say anything.
If you're acting like that at 18 years old, you were most likely groomed, which we kind of find out later in the book that Hardin was.
Yeah.
But for the amount of drama, for the amount that happens, for the amount of, I don't know, I guess, emotion, drive that Tessa and Hardin put in this relationship, it's not the typical I'm 18, just went to college kind of relationship. It's just, this is not a fling, which is rare at 18, but also the trauma and the back and forth and the abuse is also not common at 18. So.
Right. And, you know, and I quoted, or I didn't quote, but I put, like, tell me you're in a toxic relationship without telling me you're in a toxic relationship. And it is, well, I expected when I told my boyfriend such and such, he was going to blow a gasket. He was going to cuss me. He was going to emotionally abuse me and verbally come at me. And he didn't. He didn't, and I was really surprised. I was surprised that he was able to handle it emotionally. That I was able, you know, he was able to handle it with emotional maturity. There wasn't bickering. There wasn't fighting. He didn't cuss me out. He didn't come at me verbally. He wasn't verbally abusive.
Which is
so there it is.
Which, as the reader, we know was momentarily.
Yeah.
It was all kind of just...
Once again, it was, you know...
under the surface, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that is the first thing Hardin holds against her.
Yeah.
When he can. So.
Yes, so much. Another, you know, more skipping class in this book. Which is little. It's petty. I know. I pick out the pettiest shit.
Well, let me just point out. When I was a freshman in college, which was literally 6 years ago, I might have skipped class as a freshman here and there.
You're a babe.
But I did not skip more than one day at a time. And let me tell you, if I skipped this week, I was not skipping for at least another 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's fucking wild. Which, I mean, Hardin's dad is the chancellor, so who gives a fuck? But Tessa and Landon even, the fuck?
Tessa literally says, like, hey, Professor Soto, I am not coming to class this week. I have a trip planned. And Professor Soto is like, oh, okay, cool. See you next week.
First of all, a professor's never going to respond to you. Second of all, no, that is not excused. What the fuck? That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
I literally got the flu when I was a freshman during finals week. At the end of the school year, I had to make those fucking tests up ASAP as soon as I was allowed to be around people and not contagious.
Yeah.
And I literally had to take it with a TA sitting across from me. And I was it was horrendous. I would have rather have not had the flu and taken it with the rest of my classmates. That's how hardcore it was.
For sure.
So a professor's not going to read your message. One, they're not going to read your message. And two, they're not going to be like, okay, cool, whatever. No.
Yeah.
Especially as a freshman, they don't even fucking know your name. I don't care if you go up and introduce yourself. They don't know who the fuck you are.
Well, this is after she talks to Professor Soto about the hearing, and Professor Soto is like, I wrote a a character reference for Hardin because Zed deserved to be punched in the face. Yeah, the whole thing is just so fucking stupid. Like, it irritates me. It's not realistic. Stop pretending like whoever can just skip class. But once again, that's my petty little pet peeve in these books.
Mm-hmm.
I did enjoy the progression of Hardin and Richard's relationship. Richard, Dick, Tessa's dad. Like, the progression of their relationship was fun. Them going to the bar together. I know they're alcoholics. I'm not condoning alcoholism ever. Red flags all over. Tessa picked out her dad to start banging, basically.
I was going to say, this is Sigmund Freud to a T.
It is. Like, you're like, Tessa. But, I mean, Anatole did that on purpose. Like, she wanted it to be Tessa's dad. Or, you know, it's both of them. It's just ridiculous. So, yeah, their relationship gets funny. I really enjoy listening to Richard, a.k.a. Dick, eat all of Hardin's cereal and Hardin get pissed about it because it's just really funny.
Also, what adult still eats cereal other than my husband?
Me. I eat cereal. I'm pretty sure I ate cereal like 3 days ago.
3 days ago.
I love cereal.
Anyway, real adults eat real breakfast.
What's real breakfast to you?
I don't know, maybe
eggs?
Like egg whites.
Who's got time for that shit?
A little breakfast shake, maybe a fruit salad.
Fruit salad?
Something not for children.
I'll eat fucking Eggo waffles. Pop-Tarts.
That's only because you watched Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Yes.
I love it all. I love all breakfast food. I love avocado.
I was like, are you serious?
No. Avocado and tomato on toast. Tomato.
Avocado and tomato.
Write in. Tell us what you eat for breakfast.
Did you know that farmers in California says that there is such a surplus of avocados at this point that they're begging people to eat avocados?
I love avocados. Hopefully they'll sell them for cheap because avocados are freaking expensive.
Your mom's freaking expensive.
What? I do like that, you know, as far as like Tessa moving to Seattle, she's not willing to give that up for Hardin. I respect that. I do not respect the way she went about it because Hardin does make the comment of, we live together, we share a bed, which, you know, we'll say that's like 40% of the time because most of the time they're fighting. They're not actually sharing a bed. They're not actually living together. But the other times, like, she is signed into a lease on this apartment, which she knows Hardin's not going to do anything about if she were to move. Mm-hmm. But still, it's like, all right, dude, like, you do have a responsibility. You need to tell him. What if he lied and he can't actually afford the apartment on his own? Which I guess he offered to pay for it. So, but still, you know, it just, I don't know. Tessa, get it together.
Also, when in these books do they ever actually pay bills?
They make money out of thin air and they don't pay any bills. So
let's also talk about Seattle and that one of the biggest points I make when I was going over this book and the entire series as a whole, because I guess that's played into the point I make. For Tessa to want to be so independent, for Tessa to be raised as she says she was, why is she always so comfortable with staying with whoever will take her in? Like she does with Christian Vance and Kimberly.
Yeah.
I mean, you lived with Carol your entire life. You two supported yourselves. That was it. You found a dorm. That was it. And then suddenly you're okay living in an apartment. You don't know how it's paid for. You go and live at literal Ken and Karen's house when you and Hardin break up in the last book. And here you are randomly moving in with your boss, who's been your boss for maybe a month at this point.
Right.
Stranger danger, for one. And two, how did Tessa go from this character who's so independent to fucking, I don't care. I don't care where I'm at. I don't care what I'm doing. If I'm moving, bro.
Yeah, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like, and
it's just not...
That's going to be it. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to move based on my emotions versus I'm going to move based on logic and things I should be doing.
Well, this is just not the first character of Tessa we were introduced in the first book. The first Tessa we met wouldn't have done what she did in the second book. Wouldn't have done what she did in this book. She's so independent, she's not going to just randomly go stay or live with people she barely knows.
Yeah.
She wants to be independent for a reason.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with all of that. So rewind back a little bit. You know, I know we've been talking a lot about Hardin and Tessa. There's a major, major plot twist in this book. I
Was not expecting.
Was not expecting because guess what? It doesn't fucking make sense.
And never saw coming because it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It never should have happened. Basically, my note is Steph. WTF makes no sense, completely out of nowhere, completely unnecessary. But we are coming upon that. Let's take a minute to discuss some other things, that happened to follow up to that. Tessa's hello. Edit. Tessa has lunch with Steph and Molly.
Which one makes no sense in the first place.
Right. The whole thing is weird. You're asking, like, why is Steph doing, like, I was confused. Like, the first time I read it, I was confused by the whole situation. Like, why would Steph do that? AKA bring Molly to the lunch.
Also, why would they go to a fucking Applebee's when they've always gone to Blind Bob's?
Yeah. And, I mean, and Steph even says, like, I thought you two would be able to get along. Molly promised she'd be on her best behavior. And Steph in the first two books, that is legit. That seems like something she would truly feel and say. Like, I'm trying to make everybody cohesive. Mm-hmm. Versus, I brought her here to antagonize you. So that was a little confusing for me. And then, I
would also like to point out that at the very end of the first book, it is Molly that crushes Tessa's entire world. So if we're being realistic, if we're being logic, even taking Steph as a character, she would know better.
Yeah.
She would know. I mean, she tried to protect Tessa from Hardin the entire first book. So if she experienced what she experienced with Molly at the end of the first book and what happened at New Year's in the second book, this just makes no sense. She never would have invited Molly to this lunch, dinner, whatever it was.
Right. The whole thing is just bananas. BANANAS. It's bananas. Yeah, that's just how I feel about it. Like, it's just so stupid. And then her, to be like, oh, I'm going to let Hardin know. And Steph never says, like, I'm going to answer my phone and let Hardin know that you're on your way home. So for that whole to be a thing.
The whole thing is just weird.
The whole thing is dumb.
So filler. It is so filler. It's not even funny.
It's dumb. Yeah, it's a filler thing. It shouldn't have been put in the book. The lunch is dumb. I hated it, and I wish it never existed. Moving on.
Especially with what happens afterwards.
Yeah. It's just, that's all it's doing. It's setting up what's coming, and it just makes me angry.
Which also makes zero sense.
It makes me angry. Anyway, so before they even get there, so we get to the beach. Mm-hmm. The freaking beach trip, which I have so many notes on, but overall it was
unnecessary for this entire book.
Back and forth. Hardin was a huge prick here.
Total 180 from the way he's been trying to be in this book.
Yes.
Tessa, on the other hand, was the stereotypical Tessa, where she saw a guy that would piss Hardin off and was like, let me pretend to like you, let me pretend to maybe sleep with you a little bit and see what happens, and then cry about how Hardin reacts.
Yeah, I mean, I put in my notes, like, they both acted insane and ridiculous, and at points in the story, I didn't even understand why they are upset. She, on this book, in this colossal part of this book, she meets Robert, who was just another freaking guy 3. We've got Zed, we've got Trevor, and now we've got Robert. Another guy for her to just freaking lean on, because she doesn't know how to be independent. She just doesn't. She's like, I see you, and guess what? He's jealous of you. I'm going to lean on you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she literally waits to see Hardin's reaction. I mean, I don't know if she was intentionally waiting to see Hardin's reaction, but she noticed how Hardin reacted to the attention Robert gave her, and then immediately she's like, okay, let's fuck around enough where it pisses Hardin off, but not enough where Robert thinks it's actually real.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hardin messes, just the list of shit that happens on this trip. Hardin messes up her apartment that she has in the works to move to Seattle. Totally toxic, totally manipulative.
Let's also talk about the hot tub scene that was so fucking stupid. I mean, literally in my notes I took while reading over this was hot tub scene was fucking stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. He accused her of wanting to get pregnant. They were caught in the moment and he freaked out to like the highest extent. She freaks out to the highest extent. It just totally erupts. And that's, that leads to her hearing him talk about the apartment, which leads to everything else on this exhausting trip. I didn't even go on this freaking beach trip. I was exhausted and needed a nap afterwards.
This whole fucking, I don't even know what you want to call it. It's like a whole fucking plot that doesn't even need to exist. It plays no part in this story.
Yeah.
It would not make a difference if this plot of the story was cut out entirely. It was a waste of fucking time. It was so filler and it took so fucking long. I literally, when I was going over this for myself, I read a review online where the person was literally like, yeah, I was reading this when Anna Todd was still posting on Wattpad before it was famous. And each week I kept going, why are we still at the cabin? Why are we still here? When are we gonna move on? This person literally downvoted the book because they were like, why? Why were there so much based on this cabin when it played no significant part in this book?
All it did, and I'll get to it, was lead Tessa to leave Hardin when they got home. That's all it did. It needed to set up more drama for them.
As if she didn't have enough already.
Yeah. I mean, he meets Lillian. They freak out about the lack of the condom at the hot tub. The entire sequence lasted way too freaking long. Way too long. I should have jotted down how many pages this whole thing lasts because it was just insane.
It was at least a fifth of the book.
Yeah. We meet Riley.
Who plays no significant part.
Yeah, who plays no part in any more of the books. They're making each other jealous. He's pretending Lillian is his, he's with Lillian. Mm-hmm. He's with Riley. She's with Robert.
Both lesbians.
Yeah.
Let's just point out immediately. Lillian and Riley are lesbians. They have no intention of being with Hardin. Gay rights. Love it. But this whole plot was so stupid. And I kind of see maybe why Anna Todd kind of introduced some of the characters, because she tries to use, Lillian's parents at the end of the book. She uses Robert in the next book, but still, it doesn't make enough difference to have been included.
Yeah. It's a waste of space.
This whole book.
This could have cut out 100 pages of this book.
Yes.
If not more. Do all the guys except Landon fall in love with Tessa immediately?
How? Hardin kind of talks about her curves, but last time I checked, a hot girl doesn't make you fall in love.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Everything you hear from her in this book, Zed's in love. Zed's in love with her.
Robert's in love with her.
Now Robert's just smitten.
I'm pretty sure at one point she literally considers if Landon has a thing for her.
Probably. It wouldn't surprise me.
Let's also backtrack to the fact that Zed is not in love with her. He just wants his chance at fucking her. Because Arden got his chance and nobody thought that would go anywhere further than it did.
Yeah.
And Zed's always the person that has to call. So he thought, it's my turn. Which, fuck anyone that thinks that. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Don't be that person in real life.
Don't be a dick.
But that's the character that Zed plays. It's not that he has feelings for Tessa. It's literally like, okay, I've done all these things for you, so when do I get a chance?
Yeah.
And that's literally his whole character.
Yeah. Hardin is a total prick, basically. This whole, sequence of, at dinner, them leaving the next day, that night they're getting ready to have sex, and he finds Robert's phone number. He calls her a bitch. It's just you're like,
there's
Jesus
the bar scene.
Christ, I just want you guys to freaking stop.
So much stupid stuff is added in after that too. I mean, there's the bar scene. Robert's dad gets thrown in, or is it his uncle? I can't even remember who's the sheriff of the town. This thing is so stupid. It's like Anna Todd saw the story and they just piled on as much as she possibly could. Okay, here's Robert's phone number. Here's a random bar. Here's the sheriff. Here's this and this and this. This is not a soap opera, but she damn well tried to make it one.
Yeah. It's just exhausting. Mentally, you're just like, Jesus, just stop. Call it quits or work your shit out.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're barely a quarter through this book. So, we're an hour and 7 minutes into this.
Holy shit, bro.
Yeah. Should we make this one 2 parts?
I mean, it's 1,000 pages. We definitely could.
We'd have to go back in the beginning. Could he put something in the beginning?
I mean, if we said it now, he could move it forward.
Where would we want to stop in this part? Because that could be our first 3 episodes, and then we pick up. But then we'll have to make 5 episodes, 6 episodes.
Which is fine. We could probably, honestly, if you want, next Saturday, put out the second half of this and before together, so that the following...
the 4th book.
Fuck. You know what I mean, though. We could put those 2 together.
Yeah.
Make before a mini episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then just...
We could do before and the movies in one night.
There we go. So, if you want, next Friday, we could do the second part of this. After Ever Happy, because it's
only 500 pages.
And then the week after that, we could do before and tie into the movies, because that's a whole episode in itself. And then, so not next Friday, not the next Friday. So what would that be? Like the beginning of September? Just do...
See what it is.
Let me look up.
We'll put the 3, basically 2.5 episodes out.
That way it kind of entices listeners too, because it would be really weird to just start with After Ever Happy. So if we got a kind of like a part 2. Mm-hmm. But that would make... Let me look.
I really think we need to do standalones in September.
Yes.
Just because, I mean, we're going to be leaning into spooky
It would literally
season.
be September 2nd when we had our first standalone. Which makes sense. I mean, this is all August. Yeah. It's a 5-book series with 3 movies, 4th coming out soon. So if you want, we could stop right after the cabin scene. Because then that gives us, fucking London to talk about, which is a lot in and of itself.
Will they get back and then the Steph stuff? Should we stop after the Steph stuff?
No, let's stop before.
Okay.
Because that gives us 2 different things, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then, so, next Friday we can do Steph and London. Okay. The 26th we can do before and the movies. And the second will start with something completely fucking different. So, like, August will finish out with all of this.
Yes.
September will start with something new. But if you wanted to make this too, I mean, because it's almost, if you look at the Kindle app, it's literally almost 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
So.
I'm tired.
I mean, it's 12:10, so.
I know, and we haven't even got to halfway through this fucking book.
Which makes sense, because it's fucking so fucking long, and it has so many, like, plot twists in it.
So, we need to say something to the effect of...
Let's talk about the end of the cabin where they leave separately. Mm-hmm. And then we'll wait a few seconds and then be like, so because after we fell so long, we felt like it was necessary to make it 2 parts because there are a lot of plot twists and so much going on that this really needed 2 episodes for itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're basically almost done with the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
We're back. Hardin is a total prick. Mm-hmm. Just this whole time. Like you said, it's completely different. You know, he's saying, like, he's doing different. He's communicating the meeting. And then all of a sudden, he is just a total bastard this whole time. You know, he makes Tessa feel like shit. And he is treating her poorly. He's saying the nastiest things to her. And some of the nastiest things that he said to her in a lot of the books. Mm-hmm. I was just totally...
dumbfounded, maybe? Is your mic not picking up?
I think it turned all the way down. I don't know how long it's been like that.
Ooh, that's embarrassing. Ooh, that's embarrassing.
I hope it's not been too long. But, you know, he said some of the nastiest things here that he said to her this whole time. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wanting Tessa to be like, screw you.
Fuck you, Hardin.
Yeah. And she does. She does really good at the end, you know, at the end of the trip. She goes and stays
for this plot.
Yeah.
Gross.
She stays in Landon's room. She doesn't go to him when he's having...
Which, poor fucking Landon. Always there to be the pick-me-up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can sleep in my room, even though I have a girlfriend who I'm very committed to. You can sleep in my room, even though you're kind of my friend that I really only met, like, a few months ago. Don't really even know your middle name kind of friend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like... Landon gets put in some of the shittiest situations in this entire series.
Yeah. Landon, like I said before earlier in this, he really just needs to be like, tell them both to get their shit together.
Yes.
Because this is exhausting. I'm exhausted for Landon. And I just want to tell them to be like, stop. Like,
I mean, I almost feel like Hardin even really started that relationship with Landon because Tessa had it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, obviously Landon is a great guy. I love Landon. He's probably my favorite character.
Same.
But I also know Hardin, and I know that in the second book, he only went there because, one, he had no one else, and Tessa was already using Landon. Why wouldn't that be good enough for him?
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, I definitely see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. So we'll start to wrap up here for this part of the book. Mm-hmm. When they actually start to leave, Hardin seems like he's like realizes the mistakes that he made the previous night. Mm-hmm. He's trying to make amends. He lets her listen to his music, and I'm not excusing his behavior. You know, obviously this is one of those. In an abusive relationship, you have the highs and then you have the lows. This is him trying to bounce back from one of the lows. Mm-hmm. This is him like, well, here's my music. You know, you can listen to my phone. I'm going to be nice now. Are you okay? Let me get you food. Let me treat you better because I know I really, really fucked up last night. And she doesn't really, I mean, she lets him do things, but she doesn't say, well, it's okay. You know, She just says, I know you're sorry.
Right.
I know.
She's starting to implement that. I know you fucked up, and I want you to know that you fucked up. Also, why do they get to act so grown up? They get to do these sexual experiences and grown up experiences, apartments, everything like that. And then they literally have to ride with Ken and Karen in a fucking minivan. Why? Of all the things you want to act like your age for, why is it that you ride in a minivan with your parents? Why is that the one thing you do that's appropriate for your age? I mean, I don't know 18, 19-year-olds now, but at my age, that is the last thing I would have done. So, some of the other things.
I did just ride in a minivan with my in-laws somewhere.
You're also married, so that makes sense.
True.
I'm just saying, as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, that is the last thing you want to do. Which
Hardin does make the comment. He's like, why are we riding with them?
Exactly. Why? Why didn't you drive yourself?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I don't know. This book, nothing makes sense. We'll finish up like when they get back to the apartment. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the book, he offered marriage while he was drunk. Now he's taking that back and he's throwing that in her face, which I thought was really disgusting. He's like, you really thought I was going to marry you? I was drunk when I said that. The fact that you believe me and took that to heart is disgusting. You're disgusting. Get out. I don't want to fucking see you anymore.
Also, her name's on the lease, so Tessa, grow a pair and don't fucking leave.
Yeah. Be like, nah, I'm here.
This is much as my apartment as it is yours, Hardin.
He also blames Tessa for his drinking. Even though he says he's not, he is. He 100% is. He blames the drama. Not saying that she's not dramatic, but also like...
Which I think I made that point in the last chapter we made. I was literally like, it seems like Hardin, who's been sober for 6 months, only seems to drink when there's something tied to Tessa.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my most controversial comment I made while reviewing this part of the third book. I literally said, as a reader, you feel sorry for Hardin because of his background, because of his trauma. That is perfectly fair. He had a rough life. But I said, but Tessa's experience, her background was similar, but her history is not explored like Hardin's was. So it's so easy to blame her. It's so easily to target her. Hers was just the same. She had an alcoholic father who was abusive, who literally abandoned her. She literally said when she really first depended on Noah was one night she had that was really bad with her dad in the greenhouse. She ran and Noah met her there. So Tessa's life, like Hardin had some experiences that Tessa didn't. But hers was really bad. Anna Todd made a point to explore how bad Hardin's was, but not Tessa's, because she wanted to use Tessa as that scapegoat, kinda. But if you really get into it, Tessa has as much leeway with this bullshit as Hardin does.
Yeah. She just chose a different path. She chose to express her trauma in different ways, which was perfectionism, always wanting to be a pushover, allowing other people to walk all over her. I think that's a good place to call it today, just because, we talked about this book is so long, 833 pages. Mm-hmm. We're going to go ahead and do the last half of the book as a separate episode.
Right, because there's so much that happens in the second half of this book.
Yeah, we got a big plot twist coming up. We got a lot to cover. This book is just way too much to get done in one episode, and we want to do it justice. We want to be able to have a good conversation about the last half of the book. So we are going to stop there. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. We haven't said this before, but we definitely want to encourage you guys to like, review, and subscribe. The more reviews, likes, and subscribes, the more, the word gets spread that we are here, and we love to book talk, and we want that to reach more people who enjoy listening. So yes, like, review, and subscribe. Please, please, please hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, you can find our podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. I mean, we're everywhere. If you have suggestions or comments or whatever you want to send us,
right?
You can send that to booksandbestiespodcast@gmail.
Please slide into our DMs.
Yes.
We love some DMs. So please slide in any recommendations. We love.
Yes.
We always want to hear that. So yeah.
We started with smut. We love smut. Does not mean we only want to talk about smut. Actually, we were talking earlier about how after we finish the after series, we kind of want to do something maybe thriller or suspense,
mysterious, something different. Like we love reading. We love doing different kind of stuff. I want to definitely read something that's going to keep me pulled in.
Right.
Oh my gosh, we love stuff like that. So please send us any recommendations.
Yes.
We want everything you've got. So this, we could go on forever talking about books.
Yes. So anything you've got to say, go ahead and send it to us in a DM on any social media, or send us an email at Gmail. And we'll catch you next chapter, Smuts.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.